Joining us live now is Geoff Thomas. He's the aviation editor at the West Australian. Geoff, Virgin Australia being in another trading halt today, we're waiting at the moment for a company announcement on that front. That could come today or in the next couple of days. What are you expecting? The company we know has hinted at restructuring. We know it wants significant support from the government as well.
Yes, indeed. They've gone into a trading halt. Mind you, a number of companies have done that over the last month or so for various reasons. Yes, they're in discussions with the government, and the expectation or the hope is, I should say, that the government will respond. We should clarify something here for viewers. The government talks about the fact that they've already given the industry $1 billion. That's not actually correct. They've given them $715 million. That was the first package, but that's a waiver of fees and charges that they only incur when they're flying. Now, they're only flying now at about 5% of their network, so that particular package is really quite meaningless. And the other part, the 300, that went to support REX and regional services. So effectively, Qantas and Virgin have not received very much from the government thus far, and their competitors overseas are receiving literally billions and billions of dollars. In the United States, the Trump administration has given US airlines $90 billion, and that sort of support is being mirrored across the globe, whereas so far our airlines really haven't been given anything that's tangible.
Would it make sense for the government to get equity in our major airlines in return for its support? I mean, this is a concept I know the federal opposition in particular has been pushing.
Well, look, indeed. I mean, let's go back in history if we can. Qantas is the big gorilla, if you like, of our airline industry. Some people call it a big gorilla because it was in government hands from 1947 to 1993. And the airline it merged with to create its domestic network, Australian Airlines, formerly TAA, was in government hands all of its life from 46 to 93. Now, that airline group has grown to the fabulous organisation it is today with the wonderful reputation it has, largely because it was in government hands. So there's a precedent for the governments to be involved, and maybe equity for 5 years or something like that, and then a sellout position after that to give the two airlines stability. Because people will say, well, look, you know, Virgin's foreign-owned. Well, largely foreign-owned. Well, yes, it is. But Qantas is 50% foreign-owned. So it's not as though it's just one and not the other. And the dynamic here is that Virgin has given, because it's created all these low fares back in 2000, airfares in this country have dropped by 40% over the last 20 years. So it's been a tremendous boost to travel, to the tourism industry. It's given so much to the Australian economy. It forced Qantas to launch Jetstar, and that's now a wonderful airline. So its contribution to the Australian economy has been massive. And to ask for $1.4 billion to help it through this coronavirus, I think is a very small ask. Particularly, I mean, Qantas has sort of said we don't really need it. Well, if international travel is not going to resume out of this country till 2021, then Qantas will be on its knees, and it will definitely need some assistance.
Well, as you mentioned before, it's just 5% of services are continuing at the moment. We've seen people struggling to get home after being in quarantine outside of their own home cities in some instances. But it's not just passengers, is it, Geoff? It's also freight, which is a major consideration for the government.
Look, indeed, Ash, it's spot on the mark. People don't realise that 40% of the world's trade goes by air, and that 40%, 90% of that goes in the bellies of passenger aeroplanes. So people might look at Flight Radar 24 right now and say, oh, there's planes flying everywhere, and they're passenger planes. Well, yes, they are, but largely they're passenger planes that have been chartered to carry cargo. So it's very important, particularly for Australia, where, you know, one of the sparsest populated continents in the world, enormous distances. We rely desperately on passenger planes carrying cargo. And just one example of that is between Melbourne and Perth every night, there are 3 737 pure freighters alone just carrying express cargo, not general cargo, express cargo, 45 tonnes of it. And half of that goes up to the northwest of Western Australia to support the resource industry. So there are so many knock-on effects. There are so many dominoes here that need to be addressed. And one of the other things too is when we come out of this coronavirus domestically, we're going to need two robust airlines to support the tourism industry. People won't go overseas. They'll go to Queensland, they'll go to Tassie, wherever it happens to be. And if we don't have two robust airlines, then airfares will go up between 20 and 30%. That's what the evidence has been in the past, and that's what we're going to find. That's the last thing we need, are high airfares after the coronavirus pandemic is over.
That'd be just another blow, wouldn't it? Geoff Thomas, appreciate your insights. Thank you for that.